Okay, so why don't we talk about recreation and our national conservation lands here in the state of Nevada. Um, so we truly are blessed here in Nevada of having some wonderful recreational opportunities across the state. And I think we have a wide variety of recreational opportunities from motorized to non-motorized, which is great. So here are some photos of just some of those activities. So good news, in fiscal year 13, we estimated 8 million visitors to our state. We had over 400 special recreation permits issued this year. We outreached 1,400 environmental ed interpretation programs throughout the state. And we've got initiatives such as America's Great Outdoors, Youth and Let's Move Outside, and increasing public awareness of the importance of outdoors. I think we've all heard about today's society and youth being disconnected from the environment. And I think these programs, activities are an attempt to get folks, our youth in America into the outdoors, whether it's through careers or at least an appreciation of what the outdoor values we have on our public lands. Many of you probably aware of this, Secretary Jewell, high priority on engaging the youth and getting them engaged in what we do on our public lands across the Department of the Interior. So here again, we have a few photos of some of the activities that we did this year. We're very actively engaged in the Cabela's Great Outdoors Day, where we reach a lot of folks coming into the store there. We got California Trail Center, many activities there. We had a meeting there earlier this week. It's a great facility for anyone who has not visited that facility. I'd highly recommend the visit because they really have some great information and top-notch displays at that facility. And Black Rock Desert, of course, very big and popular, more than just Burning Man, and we have very active engagement of local partners, friends groups in our area. So, next. So we do have great momentum in the recreation program here in the state, and as with all of our programs, we do have flat or declining budgets. One of our challenges is how do we continue that momentum and not lose any ground, and leveraging our partnerships, and I'll talk a little about that in a second, is kind of one of the new things that we'll be looking at trying to implement and hopefully increase partnership contributions and volunteer efforts. One of our challenges here in Nevada is that we have basically one recreation management specialist per field office across the states, and it's not enough. And unfortunately, when you only have one of, we call the one-of-kinds in our offices, they're tapped to do a lot of other things besides what they're hired to do, recreation. So whether it's a mining EIS, whether it's dealing with horse gatherer EAs, sage grouse, you name it, we need input from our recreation folks on a lot of other activities. So then it stretches them from doing the good things on the ground for recreation, but we also need that recreation input to other programs. So that's one of our challenges that we have going on. Of course, we've talked about some of our heavy workloads, whether it's horses, the sage grouse EIS effort. Amy showed the land use plans that are going on across the state. That's a big time for many of our folks. So it's just something that we are trying to balance. So some solutions. As I mentioned, we have really great partners here. We've gotten rewards. The Black Rock, High Rock Friends Group received a national award here earlier this year. You saw the Bootstraps group get an award here in the Battle Mountain. We've got a lot of examples of people doing wonderful things, helping the BLM out, and being recognized nationally for those efforts. We want to continue that and applaud that effort, and we want to continue to work hard to keep those relationships where they are at. One of the things that the BLM is producing is called the Recreation and Visitor Services, from the Recreation and Visitor Services, the Connecting with Communities 2014-2019 strategy. Former Director Bob Abbey challenged us to come up with some new good ideas for each one of our programs. In the recreation program, that was the outcome of that good idea. And what it does is it recognizes our limited budgets that we have across the Bureau, and it provides some goals and objectives and some recommendations on how we can continue leveraging our partnerships to take them to the next level to deal with the challenging issues that we have in the program. And it's not just the recreation program, it's really partnerships for all of our programs across the Bureau. So that'll be, I'm looking forward to seeing that document here. Okay. The Federal Lands Recreation Enhancement Act, the good news there, it has been extended through December 8th, 2015. I think many of you are aware that the fees that we collect at our visitor centers and campgrounds go back into improving those facilities. If we weren't getting those fees, a lot of our facilities would be in serious challenge to maintain the level that they're currently at and keep up with the operation and maintenance. So it's a very important part of our budget figure in providing those services. So we're happy to see it was extended to 2015. I think that's a big part there. So RAC, for those of you who know Barb, she's very, very appreciative lady. She's just a great person, and she definitely, I love her presentations to me. She definitely wanted me to say how much she greatly appreciates all the effort the RAC has helped her out with stuff. We haven't had a lot of new proposals coming forward where we need to present it to the RAC. Hopefully in the near future we will, but she definitely wants to keep you guys engaged. So our National Conservation Lands, in Nevada we have 3 NCAs, Black Rock, High Rock, Red Rock Canyon, and Sloan Canyon. We have 45 designated wilderness areas, 63 wilderness study areas, 3 National Historic Trails, and of course the California National Historic Trail Interpretive Center. So that makes up BLM Nevada's National Conservation Lands program. Over here on the table, if you haven't seen a copy or you want a copy, we do have the national strategy, 15-year strategy on how we're going to manage our National Conservation Land system. So that's available here. There's pictures of the Grand Staircase Escalante. What each state did, and it's also on the table here, is then developed a statewide plan of how we're going to meet the goals and objectives on the national plan in the state of Nevada. We completed that here, and with a lot of public participation from our stakeholders in that plan. So if you don't have that, that's also on the table. Nevada did get recognized from our national office as having one of the better plans for dealing with the NLCS, so that's good positive feedback from us. And that's the picture of that right there on the table. And I think you guys were actively reviewed this last year as a RAC membership, so. So our NCAs, we have annual meetings with our friends group. Purpose of that meetings are basically to kind of go over the strategy, give a check to see how we're doing, help develop the future annual work plan as far as where we want to go with the National Conservation Lands. In this case, at the bottom you see folks at Black Rock, High Rock having a discussion out in the ground, which is a wonderful idea to talk about where we need to go. The document is intended to be a living document, to be changing, to be very flexible. So, okay, so youth, big priority for the secretary, big priority for the president. Just makes good sense to get people out on our public lands. Here's a couple of examples where we have folks helping out with Hawkwatch International, and then we have some people building duck boxes in the Carlin Canyon area. So these are just some of the examples of what we're doing, but this is what the secretary is calling her strategy this year, the 21st Century Conservation Service Corps. So you'll probably be hearing more about that in the future. We will continue to reach out to folks and hire folks and get folks to volunteer to meet our youth objectives for the year. 2014 is also a big year for 2 reasons. You guys have probably seen it's Nevada's 150th birthday. A lot of activities being planned across the states. And it's also the Wilderness Act's 50th anniversary. So our Nevada 150 projects. Here are some of the things that we're doing, have done. We're creating a children's activity book. I'll show you a picture of that in a second. The poster that Amy, here we go right here. We went out, got private folks to take photos of their places in Nevada that they liked, and we ended up, and they donated their photos to us to create this planner. This was so successful because we got so many photos. We're going to do the same thing in 2014. So looking forward to that. We're developing posters, and so there's a whole variety of things that BLM Nevada is doing to celebrate the 150th anniversary. So this next slide kind of shows the picture of the children's activity book. Basically, they're developing a story from each of our BLM offices to put into this activity book, and the children that you see here are the characters of those stories from each one of the offices. So before I go into the OHV vehicle registration program, any questions on recreation? Okay, that was pretty easy. Wasn't as stimulating maybe as horses or something, huh? All right, so let's talk about the off-highway vehicle program. So I think most of you are familiar about this committee, statewide committee. It's got 11 voting members appointed by the governor. Here is the folks of the 11 voting members, the representation. You'll see that BLM is one of the 9 non-voting members as part of this commission. Is there anyone here on the RAC on the commission? Was there someone in the past on it? Okay, perfect. Okay, good deal. So good use, you can help me out if there's any changes I haven't got right up here. Yeah, there you go, next slide. So as you know, OHVs have been required to be registered since July 2012. Nevada State Parks estimate there are 425 off-highway vehicles in the states. As of November 2013, we've had 33,000 registrations. Probably no real surprise there. It does cost a little bit money to register, but this is the money that's going to be used to do some of the good things that this program is designed to do. Next. So the fund, so from the registrations, the money they get, 15% of the fund was to go to the DMV office for the registration and the collection of the fees. The remaining 85% was divided into the following 4 categories there: 60% for trails, 20% for law enforcement, 15% for public education, and 5% for administration. Next. So this is the area that BLM is going to play in. It's going to be in the trails area. Funding for the trails will go to studying and planning for trails and facilities, the NEPA that's required for that, mapping and signing of trails, the acquisition of land for trails, the enhancement and maintenance of trails, construction of trails, and the restorations of areas damaged by OHV. And it says right here, no more than 30% of the funds can go to any one of these 6 categories, so there are some limits. But this is the area that BLM can participate on public lands as far as securing some funds with the states and doing good things for the trail systems out there on public lands. Law enforcement. Those are administered by the Office of Criminal Justice Assistance, and there are no plans to fund BLM law enforcement at this time from this account. However, while BLM cannot enforce in Nevada state laws, we do have a federal law that allows us, and that's the 43 CFR 8341.1, that allows us to enforce, OHV registration on public lands. So we're not enforcing the state law. So if the question comes up, this is a state law, you have no jurisdiction, they're right, but we have a federal jurisdiction, a law that allows us to implement the register, or not so much implement, but basically give tickets for folks who are not registering their vehicles. And the money from those tickets does not come back to BLM, but goes back to the U.S. Treasury. So the grant program, the deadline just passed for their filing the first rounds, January 15th. I did not, and I know there was a meeting last Friday where they went over the grants. I wasn't able to attend, so I'm not sure what the outcome was of the grants, but we did support a few projects on there. Apparently, approximately $250,000 was available for trail projects. The grants will be awarded on March 15th, and our offices continue to work with our local partners and governments to come up with some great ideas for the use of these funds to do good things for trails and off-highway vehicle management. So any questions on that? So really, this program is really just getting going. It's, it's just up, running.
David Von Seidern. Raul, we heard earlier that there's 25,000 horses on Nevada HMAs, and now there's a figure of 430,000 OHVs out there. Does the BLM or anybody have a handle on what proportion of damage to resources is done by OHVs versus overgrazing by horses?
A proportion? I don't know if we have a proportion. I mean,
Do you have any handle whatsoever on what the damage to our resources on public lands are by OHVs versus the overpopulation of horses?
Oh, closer? Hey, get a little closer to the mic. Sorry. Yeah, so the question was, does BLM have any a handle on the amount of destruction by OHV use as compared to overgrazing by horses, or both? I don't know. Is that fair? Yeah. I don't know if we can say we got X number of miles of trails that are in bad shape or anything like that. We do know where we have areas on case-by-case basis, but I can't say, we can say at this point, we know we've got a whole bunch of trails, X miles of trails that are in tough shape. Unless any of the BLM offices, anyone have any better information? Doug?
Well, just to answer that question, I think anybody that spends any time out on the public lands in Nevada anyway clearly sees that there's a lot of unmanaged OHV use occurring out there. And I think the question, to answer that question, there's probably no measurable amount of damage that we can document. But one of the things that most of us are doing is addressing it through our land use plan to designate areas limited to existing roads and trails. So I think from that perspective, I think BLM through the land use planning process is clearly trying to get a handle on OHV use so it's properly managed.
I know our ELCO office is in the process of starting to do some trail inventories, and as they do those inventories, they'll be in a better position to see where there's disturbance. But they're in their first year of doing that.
Just to comment on the comparison that a Mustang or a wild barrel is a Mustang or a wild barrel 24/7, where of those 430,000 estimated OHVs in Nevada, that a lot of them are past vintage, and if they get out of the garage at all, it's pretty much an improbability. But on the ones that do get out, that in other words, the 430,000 is just, I think it's a miscomparison, because they're not on the trails, they're out in public lands 24/7. And we're really looking at a much smaller amount that are new and in good shape and so forth, and so are used on a regular basis. And that regular basis is probably simply on weekends. Nevada is much behind the rest of the states in the West as far as trail management and trail planning. And as we get our travel management plans in place, that we're going to see far less detrimental impact by OHV recreation and competition. That it's a process that takes time, but we're more than halfway through it. That in most areas, that OHV travel is already limited to existing roads, trails, and dry washes. That in many areas, Carson District, Southern Nevada District, that there's inventories that have been completed and will be presented as part of the RMP revisions. And with those inventory trails, that it's no longer going to simply be existing roads and trails, but no, it's those in the inventory to prevent proliferation of trails. That it's a process that's in the works right now, but it's there's going to be an OHV. In other words, there's going to be a travel management plan in place here, probably in the next 5 years.
Yeah, and I want to put a plug on travel management. I mean, this is another area where folks need to be actively engaged in as we do this. Because we do know we have some problem spots, but until we actually come up with a plan that says, hey, reroute this, close this, this is sustainable trails, you know, the public, it's tough for the public when they go out there to figure out where they go, right? They kind of follow the trails and they kind of follow the latest track that's made, you know, to avoid bad areas, and it sometimes perpetuates it. But, you know, like I said, we're in the process of getting proactive and doing travel management, and Nevada is one of the states that's behind compared to some of the other states, but we're getting there, so I appreciate that. And definitely put a plug for engagement at the local office when we do travel management.
Just a quick comment on next year's grant. I would urge all the district offices and field offices to get with your partners and come up with a strategy now and talk about what in-kind donations the BLM could give. I mean, you know, a partner group could get money for outdoor education and pay to put a person on an OHV, you know, but they always ask for in-kind donations. If the BLM could possibly, you know, donate the OHV to the program or a truck or something like that, and obviously the person would have to go through the proper safety things. But let's start thinking about it now and not wait till the last minute, because there's a lot of money there and could really go to use on our public lands.
Yep, good plug.
Plan early.
Yep, good plug for getting engaged. Appreciate that.
Raul, I see a lot of Californians coming over to Western Nevada and riding. Does the registration process any way document or account for those riders coming from California?
Well, I don't think the registration process is just for Nevada licensed vehicles. California vehicles are probably licensed, I'm going to guess. California seems like a state that's pretty well licensed. You could probably. Okay. Oh, it's okay. Yeah, so. Yep.
It came up in subcommittee last week or actually 2 weeks ago. Are there any studies of the impact on habitat from the snowmobiles?
Park Service, I'm going to guess, would have a good idea on that one because of Yellowstone National Park and probably Glacier National Park, where they do have a lot of snowmobile activities in the parks. So I would say yes, but I don't have those. But I'm sure they exist.
Okay.
Yep. Anything else? Okay, you guys were kind to me once again. So I appreciate that. So, like I said, I'll be around. Any other questions on anything, please feel free to come and talk